Kath goes and tries to rent a pumpkin-style coach for the wedding. And I put the hard word on her saying we can do a deal, and I say, what about a little kiss? And then she says, I don't think so, Brian. And I say, no kiss, no coach. No kiss, no coach. And then it cuts to her at the end of in the next scene in the kitchen, holding a footy frank from her and said, you kept saying no kiss, no coach.
Welcome to The Final Encore, a show exploring the life and legacy of some of Australia's most interesting characters as they step into our studio funeral parlour to reflect on their life by planning for their death. I'm your host, Sam McConkey, and with me in studio today is Tony Rickards.
Is this a funeral parlour?
It is, of sorts.
Where are the stiffs? Sorry.
Tony is a legend of Australian TV, actor, comedian, writer, who's appeared in everything from The Russell Gilbert Show to Kath and Kim and Blue Heelers. He's perhaps best known, though, for playing Con Morasco on the long-running comedy radio show Punter to Punter. Tony is one of the funniest guys I've ever met, and I'm excited to explore how all of his experiences come together for one final farewell. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Sam. Good to be here.
As you know, the point of this show is to plan your funeral, Tony, but we almost should have been having this conversation 40-odd years ago. You had a near-death experience on set. How did that happen?
It's interesting. Back in 1981, which was the first feature film, I did a film called Squizzy Taylor. I was doing this scene in Moore Street, Fitzroy. It was all set in the 1920s, obviously. And I was on the running board of this old vintage car with a gun in my hand going bang, bang, bang at some of Squizzy's rivals. And the deal was that the car would go down Moore Street very fast and then slow down and turn into a laneway.
Yep.
And we did a few takes of it that way, and the cue for me to get back into the cab and off the running board was to knowing that the car was slowing down. And then they decided to do another take. The director decided the car wasn't going fast enough, and we had a Peter Brock's brother, Philip Brock, being a double for the guy doing this. So it was a sort of racing car driver guy. And so the decision was to go straight ahead and not slow down into the lane. And I'm on the running board thinking, because you keep acting, you don't know when you're out of shot. So I'm on the running board going bang, bang and thinking, why aren't we slowing down? And I suddenly looked up, we were going straight ahead at speed. And on one side, 6 inches from our car was a camera truck, and on the other side was a generator truck, and this guy was squeezing through the gap. And I looked up and suddenly saw the back of this truck approaching really fast, and somehow I threw myself back into the cab and basically said to David Atkins, who was playing Squizzy, said, what the fuck was that? And I was really I just thought, first of all, how did I manage to, react that quickly and save my life? Because if I hadn't have,
Toast.
I would have been like in those cartoons where they sort of but they sort of somehow bounced back in the cartoons. That was a near-death experience.
Did you take the time to pause and reflect and stop the show?
No, not really. We sort of kept moving, but it stuck in my mind, obviously, because we're talking about it now. That was 1981. What's that? 43 years later.
It's a good segue. Let's talk your funeral now, Tony. Before we get into specifics, what does a good funeral look like to you?
Well, it looks good if I'm not in it, I think. I have to say that. In particular, in recent times, I do a lot of the eulogies. I just, not that long ago, farewelled my godfather, who's my father's best friend. He was 97. I think he planned to get to 100, but he decided, I think, once Queen Elizabeth died, he wouldn't sort of hang
didn't want the
around
letter
for a
anymore.
telegram. I don't think he really cared for a telegram from big ears, so he decided he wouldn't hang around. And I had to do the eulogy for him at the church that we all attended all the way through our youth. I was in the choir there and the drama group there and all of that stuff. St Oswald's, Melbourne, Glen Iris. And anyway, the thing was that Uncle Nev, he'd written a fantastic autobiography of his life, and it was that thick, it was 200 pages. And I'd read it, but then I had to read it again before I did the eulogy and to compress it into about 20 minutes, which I succeeded in doing. I suppose a good funeral would be one where, a lot of people are there. Does that answer the question?
It does. You spent a lifetime in comedy. What role do you think humour has in death and funerals?
It's an interesting question, Sam, because when we did the radio show, which was called Punter to Punter from 1981 to 1990, our role was to take on anything that was sort of a bit tragic and make it funny, make a sort of humorous comment on it through our characters. And the reason was we wanted people to get comforted by that, saying, this has happened, let's move on. Now, we would not get away with it in 2024, but we were certainly happy to do that sort of thing because people laughed, and laughter is good, that's the whole thing about being alive is happiness, laughter, smiling. That's what we want to be doing.
We'll get back to that later. In the interim, let's get to specifics. What's the venue, Tony? Give us the vibe. Are we thinking outdoors, church, pub, comedy venue?
Well, I think we'd have to book out Festival Hall, what with all of my fans. No, I don't know. I think, I'd imagine probably would end up being at the church where, I sent off my mother and father and Uncle Nev there recently in Oswald's and just see how we go. I suppose it's not that I'm particularly religious. In fact, I'm probably particularly not religious. But in a way, I would do that in respect to my parents.
Venue sorted, local church. Next question is music. Tony, what's the soundtrack?
I think the one that I would probably choose is a very old song called They All Laughed. It was in a movie which I cannot remember the name of now, but I think it's about a 1931 movie. Do you know the song?
Frank Sinatra?
Well, he was one of the people who sang it. Yeah, eventually. They all laughed at Christopher Columbus.
That's right.
It's just, I think it'd work.
And I think the last line actually is, who's having the last laugh now or something like that? Is that right?
Could be.
Yeah, very, very fitting if that's the final
lyrics
the final line.
And music are, not that.
Here for the tune, less so for the lyrics.
No, the lyrics were good, but, don't quote me on lyrics.
All right. Music sorted, venue sorted, food. Tony, what's on the menu?
My favourite dish is garlic prawns, but they have to be done in the Spanish way.
Tell us.
They have to be in a little sort of either metal or terracotta bowl with very hot oil, garlic, obviously, and a touch of chili flakes in there, and with crusty bread. I used to go to this place going right back to 1977 in Johnson Street called Costa Brava. It moved around the corner into Brunswick Street, and I just used to go there, kept going there to have the garlic prawns, and sometimes I would have the grilled quail to begin with. But I don't know, that's probably a tricky one to organise at a funeral, but my friend, the chef, if he was still around, he could probably get that organised. He usually does.
Been to Claypot in St Kilda?
That's the one. The one in Claypots is now where you would go to have that particular dish, and they have the really big prawns.
Yeah, single big king prawn.
Yeah, and you really can't eat anything after that. It's the best, Claypots.
Change your life, that king prawn. Music sorted, food sorted. Time for the shrine. Tell us what's on the shrine at your funeral.
I suppose you'd have to have a Con Morasco hat. I mean, this is the current Con Morasco hat, and as you can see, it's got dust all over it, so I haven't done many gigs lately, but that's the sort of one that survived. But many of them, there were many along the journey, and they used to get knocked off because people liked to souvenir them. And one hat that I had was a navy blue leather one.
Right.
Pork pie hat it was. And suddenly it went missing. And one day I walked into the Kerrang Hotel, which is in Western Victoria, and sitting on the shelf behind the bar was my hat. And I just looked at it and thought, okay, you can stay there.
You obviously played Con for 8+ years. You played some other iconic characters. What are the other ones that stand out in your mind?
I've got about 100 credits on my IMDb page, and I sometimes think about all the
Can you remember them
people I
all?
played, different names of people I played. Brian was Kath and Kim.
Yeah,
Uh,
of course.
and, I'm probably recognised most these days for Kath and Kim. But if you're talking to little children, I recently did this show called The Investigators, which is a kids show,
Right.
and played Mr. Henderson, who somehow ends up wet under the sprinkler. I can't remember what happens in it, but everybody sort of, if you're a little kid, they'll say, "It's Mr. Henderson," So, one character I played on Blue Heelers was a character called Compo. And Compo was a guy who was a bit like Con Morasco. He was very dodgy, and he was called Compo because all he would do, he would just try and find a way to get compensation, workers' compensation. And so he was called Compo, and that was a great character. He was a real idiot.
Is there a role that you haven't played yet, or a character that you haven't played yet you'd love to play?
I haven't played Winston Churchill, and you got no idea how many times people say I look like Winston Churchill. I suppose the people watching this might say, "Oh yeah, he does. Just needs a cigar." I was recently in Rome. We finally had this big overseas trip for a month, and we ended up in Rome in a place called Trastevere, which is this little place near the river, the Tiber, and there's about 120 restaurants there. And we went to this restaurant, and the guy who was the waiter had tattoos all around his neck, and quite a nice guy. He said, "Oh, Winston Churchill." And he kept calling me Winston. And yeah, right, okay. And then at the end of the meal, I was paying the bill, and I paid 141 euros. I thought, that seems a bit much, Then I looked at the bill and had Hendrick's gin on it, and we didn't have Hendrick's gin. And I said, "Excuse me, I don't think we paid the right bill," and it ended up he'd given me the wrong bill. Now, I don't know whether he was dodgy, and he kept saying, "Sorry, Winston, sorry." And I said, "Well, yes, these things happen."
It feels like that might not be the first time he's tried that. Pick a celebrity that you look roughly like, give you a slightly higher bill, and hope that the camaraderie you've built is...
Yeah, I think you might have a point there, Sam. But I love Trastevere and I love Rome.
Sort of the mementos part. Are there particular photos you'd want on the memento?
Well, I would probably have a photo of my family, who I love very dearly. I have 3 children, and even their partners, 2 of them. I hope they might be their lifelong partners. But I brought a photo in for you today that is because I'd probably have a photo of my first dog and my current dog, because I love my dogs. And this one is a photo I found of me in 1967 when I got this Dalmatian. And this Dalmatian, I was allowed to pick from about 8 of them, 8 puppies. And I always sort of look back and think, "Oh, did I pick the right one?" Picky was just a beautiful dog. She died of cancer at 13, and it's the only time I ever saw my father cry. And what else would I have on their photos? Oh, probably me playing for Hawthorn. Oh, no.
Wrong funeral. We had Dipper on last week.
I don't know. That'll be about it.
What's the photo that hasn't been taken yet that you hope will be on there? Is there a moment that you're looking forward to capturing that hasn't happened yet?
Me accepting...
Academy Award for playing Winston Churchill?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Great question, great answer. Okay, so next question is the highlight reel. At some point in your funeral, your life will be played back to you. Is there a single pinnacle moment that you'd want everyone to relive?
I had lots of highlights in my career, and, with my family, when each of my children were born. Probably, I think when my first child was born, who was a boy, because I had 3 sisters, it just meant that the surname was going to go on. And I got drunk for a week, which didn't really impress my wife.
What about from your career, Tony? Is there a single highlight, pinnacle moment that you'd like to go back and relive?
One of the great jobs I ever did was a show called Waterfront back in 1983, which was a 6-month job. That was one of the highlights because it was a long job. I was playing one of the leads in this show. It was all about the Wharfie strike in the 20s. And it's still one of the best written shows I've ever been in, and I got to work with Greta Scacchi, I got to work with Warren Mitchell, Jack Thompson. Jack Thompson and I subsequently became very good friends. There were a lot of other famous people in that show, and so that was brilliant. But another highlight, I suppose, from an exotic point of view, was I got cast in this film opposite Oliver Reed. And Oliver Reed was somebody that I'd already pinned as being, one of my heroes when he played Bill Sykes in the musical Oliver. He was always so scary and powerful. And he did this film that a guy called Nicholas Roeg directed it. Nicholas Roeg was best known for a film called Don't Look Now, which was recently mentioned in dispatches when Donald Sutherland died.
Right.
Because Donald Sutherland was in that with Julie Christie. It was all set in Venice. Quite an amazing film. But anyway, Nicholas was doing this film called Castaway. This is before Tom Hanks decided to call the film Castaway. And it was basically about these two people who, this guy had put an ad in the paper for a girl to join him on an island for a year being shipwrecked. And the island was actually somewhere sort of off the northern part of Australia, but we filmed it all in the Seychelles.
Oh, great.
And so I was in the Seychelles for 3 weeks working opposite Oliver Reed, who, we just got on famously. And, he liked to drink, as everybody knew, but it didn't mean that he wasn't as potent as ever with his performances. And I couldn't really believe that I was working with Oliver Reed, one of my heroes.
Did it live up to your expectations, working with your heroes?
Absolutely. We had a jolly good time. And he thought I was a great actor too, which made me like him even more. The night shoots were worse because he was that much more pissed, but he really, but they were entertaining.
Not to end this section on a low light, but 2-part question. How do you deal with regret? And is there a particular moment in life where you'd like a do-over?
Oh, well, what's the point of dealing with regrets? We go forward, not back. And I'm sure there's plenty of regrets if I wanted to list them, but I'd rather not because we might go over time.
Time to move on to the eulogy. What do you hope people say about you, Tony?
That I was good company. I cared about them. Didn't take any crap. It was funny. I was a good actor. Best actor in Australia, something like that.
Easily.
I want them to say he gave it a crack. And one of the things that I like to think that I've been able to do along that journey of where I've ended up being quite well connected because of just the variety of different jobs I've had and the amazing people that I rub shoulders with, is being a facilitator, helping people. If there's somebody who's sort of got an interest in something, if I can push them in that direction or get somebody to help them or whatever. So a bit of a facilitator, they might say. I don't know. I think when people are looking from the outside in, I'll leave it to them to really say what they want to say.
What lessons do you hope you've left your kids?
Just to know that, it's not all beer and Skittles. It's not, you have good days and bad days. And if you're having a bad day, know that'll become history very soon. I used to say to women when they were pregnant and had to go through that incredible pain of childbirth, it was easy for me to say, but I used to say to them, well, it'll be history soon. You come out the other side and, I don't know, they particularly appreciate it.
And then I'll be at the pub for 7 days.
It's easy for you to say. But, what I'm saying is that, and you never give up. I would say to them that they never give up and be happy, find your lifelong partner, all of those things.
Final question. What's your epitaph? No kiss, no coach?
No. Some people would like that, no kiss, no coach, wouldn't they? I did thousands of gigs in the I mixed between being an actor and being a comedian, which my agent in Sydney, Jane Cameron, was a big acting agency, was infuriated by, because people really want to put you in a pigeonhole and say, you're an actor, not a comedian, which infuriated me because I was good at both and I loved doing both. But what I was going to say is that I did a lot of live gigs all the way through the 80s. Sometimes I would do 14 gigs a week.
Wow.
And I did whole seasons. I did a one-man show at the Last Laugh, of which I'm incredibly proud, where I played lots of different characters. And I think when I got to the 90s, to be perfectly honest, I was a bit burned out with that sort of thing, and I largely turned to doing television and films more. But one time I was doing a gig, and this guy handed me a yellow napkin, and I didn't read it until after the gig because I was sort of busy performing. And it said on it, some are called, few are chosen, which I gather is something out of the Bible. I didn't know that at the time, but I'd had a particularly great gig, and I was just on top of my game, and that'd be nice. Probably a bit. Probably people go past and go, "Oh, what a wanker."
What did it feel like to be at the very top of your game at that point in time?
It's interesting. I was telling my daughter, who's now in casting, and whenever I do an audition these days, it's now all self-tests. So you have to do them yourself. It's very much, I don't know what the flaming casting people...
Oh, so you don't go into a casting studio, you just shoot it in front of an iPhone?
No, these days it's 90% of the time it's a self-test. You've got to organise to get it filmed, and I'm lucky because my daughter's in casting. Being an actor is what I am, really, number one. That's my trade. And I don't do it to be recognised or famous or patted on the back even. I often won't even look at what I've done because I will know when I've done it or filmed it, a scene or whatever, that I'll know whether I've done it really well. When you're doing film or television, the most important thing is to be across your content, know your words. Now, they say acting is, about knowing your words and not falling over the furniture. It's very true. But so once you know your words, you can then bring in the most important. That's what I wouldn't mind them saying about me afterwards is, he had great timing. That was the thing that I had. When to deliver a line in drama and when to deliver a line in comedy, and when, how much, it's just an innate sense that you just say and boom, boom,
I can't think of a better place to leave it than that. Thank you, Tony, for sharing your time with us.
I hope your funeral is... And we'll do it all again in 20 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like there's another episode of this coming, but if not, I hope your funeral is many, many, many years from now.
That'd be good.
That'd be good. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, Sam.